Okay. So we talked about how to buy a new vehicle. We talked about purchasing a used vehicle. We talked about leasing a new vehicle. So let's say you now have a vehicle. Okay. What are some of the things you think you're gonna have to pay for? Gas, for sure. Oil changes.
Maintenance.
Maintenance.
Summer, winter tires.
Summer, winter tires. Good. Yeah, a lot of vehicles you need that. You don't have all-wheel drive.
Car washes.
Car washes. Yeah.
Well.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do that for free.
What?
Car washes.
Well, yeah,
Just around the house.
yeah. I've got a house,
Yeah.
or just park in somebody else's house. Use their hose.
And that is.
There you go. Okay. So we're going to talk about four things. Yes, we are going to talk about gas, and we're going to talk about fuel economy. Okay. Regular maintenance, like oil changes, like you said. Repairs, if they come up, and chances are they will. And something we talked about before a little bit, depreciation. That's how much your vehicle loses value over time. But depending on the number of kilometers that have been driven, depending on the year of the vehicle, it goes down in value, right? Every year. It's not like buying a house, which generally goes up in value. Okay, cars generally go down in value unless you have some sort of antique vehicle that you've repaired, and then maybe it goes up in value. But anyway, we're not talking about those. So let's talk about fuel economy. Okay, and when we talk about fuel economy, and we're also talking about the cost of gasoline. Okay, so depending on the vehicle, the fuel economy can change. And in Canada, we talk about something called the fuel consumption rate. Okay, and that's how much fuel you need to require or to drive a certain distance. And in Canada, we talk about how many liters of gas will your vehicle use to drive 100 kilometers. Okay, that's what we mean by fuel economy in Canada. In the States, they talk about gallons per miles, or they call it mileage. Okay, so the fuel consumption, and generally when you see new vehicles, they usually have the fuel consumption rates on the stickers. And it tells you the fuel consumption rate in the city, and it tells you the fuel consumption rate in the country or outside the city. Which one do you think would be higher? Which one do you think would use more fuel? Driving in the city or driving outside the city? Why?
Because every time you like stop and start, like you gotta make more gas to get.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. Fuel economy, or better fuel economy when you're driving on highways than when you're driving in the city. Okay. So how do we determine the fuel economy? And this is a formula that you will get. You don't need to put it on a reference sheet. It is the liters of gas required over kilometers driven times 100. So that will convert it to a unit of liters per 100 kilometers. Because liters of gas divide kilometers driven, that tells you how many liters for every 1 kilometer. But we want to know for every 100 kilometers, that's why we times it by 100. But like I said, that's formula sheet. You will get that on the prevention. Okay, so here's some examples we can do with fuel economy. So we have a vehicle and it's been determined at 60 kilometers an hour, the vehicle uses 18.4 liters of gas to drive 225 kilometers. Okay? At 100 kilometers per hour, the vehicle uses 22.1 liters of gas to drive the same distance. Okay? So we want to figure out the fuel consumption rate for each speed. So remember what it is. It's liters divided kilometers times 100. So at 60 kilometers an hour, we used 18.4 liters, divide 225 kilometers. Times 100. Okay. And that's going to give us 8.2 liters per 100 kilometers. You need those units when you talk about fuel consumption rate. Liters per 100 kilometers. And what would it be at 100 kilometers an hour? Well, we just do the same thing with, except with the different numbers at 100. 22.1 divide 225. Kilometers times 100. And when we do that calculation, we get 9.8 liters per 100 kilometers. So you can see at the slower speed, it kind of makes sense. You get a better fuel consumption rate. Okay? The faster you go, generally, the more gas you're going to be using. And this is if you keep, this is like assuming continuous driving, not stopping and starting. So that's a pretty straightforward question on how to calculate fuel consumption rate. So let's have a look at this one. Have to think about it a little bit more. The odometer. And the odometer of the vehicle tells you the total distance your car has driven. So of a mid-sized car, it reads 34,719 at the beginning of a trip, 34,853 at the end. And in that time during the trip, the car used 12.4 liters of gas. We want to find the fuel economy. So the fuel economy, a lot of times we can go FE for short. Remember, it's the number of kilometers, sorry, it's the number of liters used over the kilometers driven. How many liters have been used? 12.4. How do we figure out how many kilometers have been driven?
34,853 minus.
Exactly. 34,853 minus 34. Okay, so we had to do an extra calculation in that one to find the distance driven. And then fuel economy out of liters per 100 kilometers, we times by 100. And we'll get 9.3 per 100, 9.3 liters per 100 kilometers. And essentially, like you said, gas obviously is involved as well. Something that you have to pay out in order to run your vehicle. So, and this was before gas prices spiked. We could get gas in Winnipeg for around this price, 112.9, but now it's up to like 149.9. Find the cost of driving 100 kilometers. Well, $9.3 liters I've used.
and I have to convert the 112.9 to dollars.
So I have to move the decimal over twice. 112.9 cents is $1.129. And that gives me $10.50. Not a very long trip, not a very expensive trip. Maybe what? Driving out to Kenora or something. Okay, one more example with fuel economy. And this takes a little thinking. So we're told the fuel economy. And we are told the driving distance from Cross Lake to Thompson. I have to figure out how many liters of gas am I using. Okay. Well, if you think about it this way, there's a couple ways you could do it. Remember, fuel consumption or fuel economy is liters over kilometers times 100. But in this question, I'm given the fuel economy of 12. I don't know the liters. I know the kilometers. And I have to times by 100. How would I figure out the liters? Wouldn't I just work backwards? Like if it's times 100, wouldn't I divide 100? And then times 252? So to find the liters, I take this and work backwards. Divide 100. And this is divide 252, so working backwards is times 252. And when I do that, I get 30.24 liters. And we're asked to calculate the total cost for this trip again. Well, we use 30.24 liters. Gas is $1.19. So it's going to be 30.24 liters times $1.19. That trip is going to cost me $35.99. Kind of a cool drive to Cross Lake because you have to use a ferry.
A ferry?
Yeah.
For your car ferry?
Yeah. And it's just like, I think it handles 2 vehicles. That's it.
That's scary.
And you cross a river. I can't remember what river you cross.
Actually,
It wasn't long. It was less than half an hour, I think.
no, I feel like it's a lot of like.
But I was driving late at night because I was going to visit a friend in Cross Lake. And so like I got to the, what? Well, because I know people. Anyway, I had to cross the ferry like at 2 in the morning. But it has to be open 24/7. So it was just me. And it was very cool because you were crossing the pitch black, all you see are stars. It was very cool. Well, because people go back and forth. Yeah, it has to be open all the time. That would be a very expensive bridge to build.
What? I guess also, who's really going all the way up there? Like the people that built it. No, but people that go up there to need it, but it's not like,
Okay, why did I-
Anyway,
I don't know. I want to go home.
Thank you.
I've been having a rough time.
Maintenance. Okay? So we're not really going to talk about maintenance costs because it's pretty self-explanatory. So yeah, I mean, oil change, oil and filter change, things like that. Fluid levels,
Rim change, you
okay?
get it repaired and then it happening again. Rims bending again.
There's a, yes, okay? Maintaining your wheels. Thank you. Anyway, I'll let you read that for yourself. Okay? Repairs, and I mean, this is pretty, you go to a dealership, you go to some other place, like Jiffy Lube or someplace like, what? And Mr. Lube, okay.
Updates here on his relationship with his girlfriend.
Okay, anyway, thank you for that. So there's maintenance, paying the cost sort of yearly or maybe every few years it's for tires and things, new tires and things like that. And then there's repairs, something breaks down. Okay? And older vehicles, likely you're going to have to pay for the repairs. Newer vehicles, chances are, could be under warranty. Okay? But let's assume that you have to pay for repairs. So what are the things involved in getting repairs done? Well, basically, the items that you're going to replace and the cost of labor. Okay? And it's labor costs can get very high. So here's an example. Getting new brakes for a vehicle for $149.95, a new starter for $250. Time required for servicing the vehicle is 2.6 hours, and the labor service rate is $85 an hour. And that's not surprising. Okay?
I don't get it. Like, I could just watch a YouTube video and fix it.
So here's how you want to break it down when you have a question about repairs.
I thought it was work or something.
Section.
What?
Relax.
Oh, sorry. Just a lot has happened.
I understand. Parts and labor. So the parts, $149.95 plus $250 will give us the total parts cost, which will be $399.95. The labor, 2.6 hours at $85 an hour. So 2.6 times 85 gives us $221 for labor.
I'll watch YouTube video.
So to find the total, I have to add the cost of the parts and the cost of the labor. And what else do I have to do?
Taxes.
Taxes. So I have to take this sum and do what?
By 1
1.12.
Well,
Thank you. And we get $695.46. Okay? So really, when we're talking about repair as a cost for vehicles, keep labor in mind as well as parts, as well as taxes. And you get charged taxes on both. The last cost we're going to talk about is depreciation. Okay? And remember, we talked about this a little bit. And again, here, just before I leave, repair costs. There's just some things that dictate how much your repairs will cost. I'll let you read that. Okay? But this is a good point to make. They are unavoidable. They're going to happen. Okay? You're going to have to pay for repairs. even if you're not running into curbs and stuff like that, or running over boulevards. Anyway, depreciation. We're going to go under the assumption that a vehicle depreciates 20% a year. Okay? So here we have a vehicle, 38.5. We want to find out how much does the car depreciate in the third year. So first year. How do I figure out how much it's going to depreciate?
Divided by 20%. Take away 20%.
Take away 20%, but to take away 20%, I have to times 20%. Okay, 0.2, and I get 7,700. So that means the price of the vehicle, or the worth of the vehicle is now 38,500 minus the 7,700 it went down. So this is the depreciation the first year. This is how much the vehicle is worth at the end of the first year. What about the second year? Well, I do the same calculations, except I don't use 38.5 now. I use 3,800 because that's how much the vehicle is worth now. So I gotta do 30,800 times 20%, or 0.20. And that tells me it depreciates 6,160. So notice it doesn't go down as much, which makes sense because the vehicle isn't worth as much. So to find how much the vehicle is now worth after year 2, I take its value after year 1, subtract the depreciation, and I get 24,640. So that's how much it's worth at the end of year 2. But I'm asked to find out how much it depreciates in the third year. So I have to do one more. But all I have to do is take the value of the car at the end of the second year, 24,640, and times it by 0.2. 0.20, either one. I don't have to do the subtraction here because it's not asking me how much the car is worth. It's asking me how much did it depreciate in year 3. And that's the answer right there, 49.28. Okay. Part B says how much is the vehicle worth after the third year. So that's where I have to take the value of the second minus how much it depreciated the third. So to find that, I have to do 24,640. That's how much it was worth at the end of year 2, minus how much it depreciated at the end of year 3. And it is now worth $19,712. Oh, sorry. That should be up here. 24,640. I keep forgetting that this thing doesn't go to the top of the page sometimes. 49.28. Should be up at the top. How much is the car depreciated in the first 3 years? Well, you could just add up the 3 depreciation values. First year it was 7,700, it went down. Second year, it was 6160, it went down. Third year, it was 4928, it went down. So the total depreciation was 18,788. Or, I mean, you could take the cost of the vehicle new minus the cost at the end of 3 years, or minus the value at the end of 3 years. You'll still get the same answer. Doesn't matter which way. Okay. What do you guys have to know?
And well, so.
Okay. I'm going to pause there for a second. Okay. Let's look at the next example. So we've got a minivan sells for $28,500. Leases for $479 plus taxes per month for 24 months. You need a down payment of $42.75, and the guaranteed residual value of the vehicle is 65% of the sale price. Okay, so what we want to do here is, remember when we talked about leasing, after your lease period, which is usually 2 or 3 years, your vehicle is worth a certain value, and you can either turn it in or purchase it. So to figure out the residual value after the lease is up, we have to do 28.5, 65% of 28.5, so 28.5 times 0.65. So at the end of your lease, if you want to purchase the van because you like it, you're going to have to pay $18,525 for it. What's the depreciated value of the van after 2 years? Well, we do it similar to the last example. It depreciates by 20%. So to figure out how much depreciation after the first year, I do 28.5 times 0.2 and I get 5,700. To find the value of the vehicle after the first year, I take 28.5 minus 5,700 and I get 22.8. So it's worth 22.8 at the end of the first year. This is first year. Second year, well, the van's now worth 22.8. It depreciates by 20%, so we're going to times by 0.20. And I get 45.60. That's how much it goes down. So the value of the vehicle now is 22.8 minus 45.60, 18,240. And how do they compare? Well, pretty close. Okay. So you can see how when they calculate the residual value, it's based on depreciation. Okay. So we could say very close. Residual value is slightly higher. By about, well, you just have to find the difference between the two, and it's less than $300. It's $285 is the difference. Okay. Okay, the last example. we're tying a couple things together. We're gonna tie how to finance a vehicle, I believe. Yeah, purchase. Okay. And we're gonna also tie fuel economy into this. And of course, whenever you're financing or borrowing, you'll get that amortization table that's on the next page. So this person is going to buy a new convertible for $16,980, including all fees and taxes, makes a down payment of $3,500, finances, remember finances just means borrows, the remainder with a 36-month loan at 8.25%. And then during the first year, Gaz drives his convertible 15,045 kilometers. He estimates the fuel economy to be 9.6 liters per 100 kilometers, and his average cost of gas is $1.29 a liter. Okay, so we are asked, using the table, calculate the total loan payments Gaz has to make during the first year he owns the convertible. Well, first of all, we have to figure out the amount of the loan. Well, the amount of the vehicle, taxes and everything, is $16,980, but he puts $3,500 of his own money down. So that means he only has to borrow $13,480. Now we have to figure out how much is he going to pay a month using the table. So he's getting a 36-month loan at 8.25%. So 36 months is 3 years at 8.25 would give us $31.45. So for 3 years at 8.25%, it's $31.45 for every $1,000 he borrows. Well, he's borrowing $13,480. So to figure out his monthly payments, how many thousands is he paying? 13,480 divided 1,000. And we times that by how much he pays for every $1,000 he borrows. And he's going to pay $423.95 per month. But we are asked, how much does he pay in a year? So what would I do? Yeah, go ahead. What time? Yeah. This is how much he pays per month, times 12. Yeah, you're right. $423.95 times 12 means he's going to pay $5,087.40 in 1 year. And this last question is very similar to the one that the Cross Lake Thompson one we did. We know he's driven this much in 1 year. We know this is the fuel economy, okay? And we know, no, that's all I need to know for now. So it takes 9.6 liters to drive 100 kilometers. I need to figure out how many liters does it take to drive this, right? So to find, remember, the fuel economy is equal to liters divide distance times 100. We are told that the fuel economy is 9.6. I know how many liters, I don't know how many liters were used, but I do know the distance. It was 15,045. And then I times by 100. Well, to figure out the liters, I just work backwards. I start with this, 9.6. Divide 1,000. Sorry, 100. And since this is divide 1545, I times when I'm working backwards. And that gives me 1,444.32 liters. That's how many liters he used in 1 year. And if gas costs $1.29 per liter, his gas cost for 1 year will be the number of liters you have to use times the cost per liter of gas works out to $1,863.17. So that's a pretty substantial amount to spend on gas. And 15,000 kilometers, yeah, maybe that's a little bit on the high end. Especially like unless you go on a lot of road trips. If you're just sort of driving to and from work and maybe the occasional road trip, you probably wouldn't be driving 15,000 in a year. I mean, you'd maybe be driving 8 to 10. You're already at 9. So where have you gone? Okay. Oh, yes, right.
I'm gonna say it's not a lot.
Okay. And when did you get it? November. Yeah, but that's because you love to drive it. And that's okay. That's allowed.